If you are a property investor and you're currently researching the Rockhampton property market right now for your next investment property, then this video is for you. Today, I'm actually going to walk you through various purchases I made for clients this year under $600,000 and give you the exact address and rationale as to why I purchased these properties, because where these properties are located could potentially be in the vicinity of where your next purchase could be, and it could really help you navigate the micro level of the Rockhampton property market. So stick around, guys. Let's dive in. If you are an existing subscriber to the channel, I appreciate you and welcome back, my family. If you are new to the channel and watching a video of mine for the first time, let me introduce myself. My name is Troy Simbasani. I am the owner and head of research of Life Buyers Agency. Now, Life Buyers Agency, we work on the ground in regional Queensland under two brands. So in central Queensland, we operate under a brand called Capricorn Life Buyers Agency, and we work on the ground in Bundaberg, Gladstone, Rockhampton, and Mackay. And then in North Queensland, we work under the brand called Tropical Life Buyers Agency in Cairns, Townsville, and the surrounding region. We pride ourselves on helping clients navigate the marketplace in regional Queensland by simply mitigating their risk and maximizing their upside potential. So I suppose if you're an investor that's struggling to potentially buy in either central or North Queensland and you need help navigating the marketplace, let's say you put in a bunch of offers and you've missed out, you've been in the market for quite some time and you just had no success whatsoever, or you want access to pre and off market deals in isolation of competition and buy stuff in the better located areas in these marketplaces, feel free to reach out to me and the team. You can give us a call on that number and visit us on one of those websites. More than happy to have a chat to see if we are able to add value to your investment journey. Otherwise, nice to meet you guys, and let's dive in. Okay, so for those who know me know that I'm pretty big on the ground due diligence, given that we're local, and my approach tends to be like I like to look at things beyond the layer of the suburb. I like to drill deeper into pockets of the suburb, street, and then property. And it needs to tick at least up to 50 different data points in order for it to make sense as an investment proponent. And today I'm going to share with you 4 deals across Rockhampton that I purchased for clients this year that are under 600,000. I'm going to walk you through the client itself and the context around what their situation was and their strategy, and then breaking down the individual property and the rationale behind the purchase. So let's start off with this first property here. So this property was purchased early on this year for a client located on the Sunshine Coast. This guy was the CEO of actually a really big multinational Australian company that turns over billions of dollars. And yeah, I was actually surprised when this guy reached out. I didn't think I would be dealing with heavy hitters like this, but yeah, we're able to get him and his wife this fantastic asset here. So we purchased this property off market, 13 Florida Crescent. It's a 4, 2, and 2 in a suburb called Parkhurst, and we purchased it for $565,000. Now, the clients, they just wanted a set and forget property, basically something that they could rent out straight away or had an existing tenant pretty much and pretty much get it rented and then leave it alone for up to 10 or 15 years. And they'd be more than happy to do minor things as things arise, but they weren't excited about the need for renovations or potential granny flat subdivision and things like that. So they wanted to be more passive investors. So when we looked at their scenario, we looked at a bunch of different suburbs and we just wanted to find where we could get the best value for money under that sub $600,000 price point. They could have went up to 650, but what we find in Rockhampton is as you go over that 650 mark, your yield starts to erode away, and there's not actually a lot of variation between the properties you can pick up for the high 500s versus the ones mid sixes or low sixes in terms of how much they rent for. So, for example, this property here, Florida Crescent, rented for $620,000, and properties, let's say, that are $650,000 in and around Rockhampton in the same suburb, as well as comparable suburbs with comparable properties like this one, a 422 brick built in the last 15 years, they're renting for only around 630, 640. So you're only looking at the best part of 10, $20 more, but you're getting a property the best part of, you know, $80 to $70,000 cheaper. So that was kind of the rationale around why we decided to keep this property purchase under 600,000, despite this individual client actually having the capacity to push up to mid 600,000s. So this property, yeah, renting at $620 per week, returns a 5.7% rental yield. And as I said before, the strategy was basically a set and forget property. So when you have a strategy like a set and forget strategy, you tend to lean more towards brick and tile. And this property was built in under 15 years ago. So I think it's on its last year of the current builder's warranty as well. And it still has some depreciation benefits left in it as well. So when we get the set and forget strategy, we're always finding these bread and butter properties, we call them, brick and tile, modern, in a family friendly area. And the reason why we decided to go with Parkhurst is that we found that when we looked at this particular pocket of Parkhurst, it is a very scarce pocket. There's not many properties that pop up in this particular pocket. Transaction volume is very low, so there was a huge element of scarcity there, both for properties to purchase as well as properties that become available for rent. Because when you compare this property and this suburb to, let's say, somewhere like Gracemere, they have a lot of transaction volume and a lot of turnover of properties for rent that are very similar to this. So we decided to actually invest in this suburb as opposed to Gracemere, where we could have got something very similar for the price point at the time. We thought that Parkhurst was, number one, better value for money, but number two, it was a lot scarce and it had the ability to generate more of a premium when it came to rent, as opposed to competing with sort of 40 other properties that are exactly like it if we were to go out to Gracemere. You can just simply jump on realestate.com now and you'll be able to see the amount of 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom brick homes that are for sale, are for rent right now in Gracie versus what's available for rent in Parkhurst. And it's basically chalk and cheese. They'll be at, I'd say, hold my hand on heart, I haven't checked, but less than 10 properties right now in Parkhurst, I would say, for rent right now. And in this particular pocket, I'd say virtually nothing, maybe one or two. But if you looked at Gracemere, you're probably looking at up to sort of 30 to 20 properties right now that are very similar to this. So that's sort of the rationale behind it. And in terms of value for money, I just thought a lot of people, what we see locally is a lot of people actually prefer to live in town. And if you can get a newer brick home in town as opposed to Gracemere, I think they're the ones that are going to outperform in the long term. So if you are an investor, check out Parkhurst. It'd be very hard to buy a brick house under 600,000 right now, but in saying that, if you can pick up something for low 600s, I think a lot of them have the ability to keep rising given the element of scarcity, particularly around this pocket here where Woolworths is and the Parkhurst State School. I believe there's sort of plenty of long-term upside there and better value for money when compared to, let's say, somewhere like Gracemere. And then when you actually look at properties like this one compared to its neighbouring suburb in Norman Gardens, if you pick this same property up and you put it in Norman Gardens, you'll be paying sort of mid to high 600s as well, even low 700s. So despite this property only being 3 or 4 minutes away from the neighbouring suburb of Norman Gardens, what we actually found was that you're getting something at least $100,000 to $150,000 cheaper for very similar properties. So number one, you get that better value for money at that lower entry price, and number two, you get that really good rental return because, as I said, there's not too much variation between sort of what something would rent for 600 at 650k versus something like this we purchased for 565k. So yep, guys, this one located in Florida Street, a set and forget strategy from an investor from the Sunshine Coast. Okay, deal number two, which is in Norman Gardens, 177 German Street. We purchased this one about a month or two ago for $550,000. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car property on, I think it was about just over 600 square meters of land. And yeah, currently renting for, I think, about $600 per week right now. So this couple, Nathan and his wife are from Sydney. And yeah, they wanted a property that was kind of set and forget in nature in terms of their strategy, but they were open to doing cosmetic renos or a renovation long term, providing the existing bathroom and kitchen had the ability to stretch at least another 5 or 7 years, and then they would consider doing a renovation then. So when we started to look at various opportunities across the marketplace, what we found was that these properties like this one, we call them Ted Price homes, and they're roughly around sort of 30 to 40 years old, and they're a combination construction. So what you'll find is majority of them generally have like a brick base, and then on top they either have like a hardy plank chamfer board or weatherboard construction, and you get that dual living for those that are generally built out underneath that have the capacity to have a room or rumpus downstairs, and then upstairs you generally have sort of the main living area, bedroom and bathroom, and they can be very popular for locals in the area wanting to buy, but also locals wanting to rent as well, given that you have sort of those two living areas across the same property. Now, if you look at this property on a map in terms of Norman Gardens, what you'll actually find is that Norman Gardens is broken up into various pockets. And when this opportunity popped up, we jumped on it straight away because when you actually look at where this one is located in terms of the various pockets of Norman Gardens, it's actually really close to what I would call the upper quartile of the market. So where majority of the homes are more expensive, or the clustering of homes there are generally around this area above 700,000 up to $1 million. And that's part of our investment framework is we want to get really close to sort of the upper quartile of the marketplace, because that's when you know you're going to be positioned in the better pockets of the suburbs. So this German Street is an area or a pocket of Norman Gardens that connects onto Sunset Drive and that connects onto Springfield Drive and a few other really nice streets around Norman Gardens where there's some really good upmarket homes. And when we saw this deal pop up, we just couldn't go past it, given that we could get something for mid 500s in a really nice part of Norman Gardens, where a lot of these Ted Price homes are selling generally for around that high 500s, low 600s, and the recently renovated ones are selling for like mid sixes. So we thought that this was a tremendous buy. Now, in terms of like the pockets of Norman Gardens, if you could actually get on, let's say, like around where Gurman Street is or the north side of Norman Road, I would class that as probably the better pocket of Norman Gardens. There are some pockets of Norman Gardens, like on the west side of Norman Road, that have some really nice homes and some streets, but there's also a high concentration of public housing on certain streets around Norman Gardens, so you need to make sure you potentially avoid that. But yeah, I would say it'd be very difficult right now to find a house like this for 550. But if you can get your hands on one between sort of 550 to 600, that is in really good condition, that has renovation potential down the track, I don't think you'll have any trouble getting them rented. And I think the long term growth opportunity is there because, as I said, they have a lot of owner occupier appeal for the local market because they have this sort of dual occupancy ability. And the ones that are recently renovated, they scrub up really, really nice as well. So, yeah, if you are looking at a property in Rockhampton and you've been scoping out, let's say, Norman Gardens, if you can look around where this particular pocket is, I think that's where the better part of Norman Gardens is. And you're definitely going to outperform, I would say, the marketplace by simply being in that upper quartile area, and you'll be able to generate more of a premium when it comes to the sales price as well as the premium rents that come with people wanting to move into like the better parts of the suburb. So yep, a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, 2 car property purchased a couple of weeks ago in Norman Gardens for $550,000, a mid 5% yield. Okay, this next deal was for clients Joey and Anne, and again, investors from Sydney. They had a quite a unique strategy where what they actually wanted to do was they wanted to land bank. So they actually wanted to land bank and then down the track build a granny flat or potentially develop the land and put townhouses or units or something of that sort down the track. So we purchased this property, yeah, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago now. 83 Painswick Street in Berska for $425,000. And this property was renting to a company for, I think, about $460 per week. So yeah, we ended up with a sort of a juicy mid 5 or high 5% yield there. It was a 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 1 car property. But the kicker for this one was that given that they had the development strategy or the granny flat strategy, we purchased this property and it sits on 1,300 square meters of land. So that is a big footprint in order for them to do something down the track. And we purchased this one off market in isolation of competition. And I would say similar properties to this that are selling on the market right now are selling for like mid to mid fours to high, mid to high fours and low fives for something like this, because this is an older gable Queenslander, but it's in really, really good condition. There are a lot of these older homes around Berska that need a full gut. They need a lot of money poured into them. The roofs are shot, kitchens, bathrooms are shot, and they're on the cheap side because of that. Whereas this one, we managed to get it for cheap, but when you look at the interior of the property, kitchen, bathroom, roof, all in very good nick. All the stumps were very good also, and we only picked it up for $425,000, where comparable properties would definitely sell for mid fours to high fours or even low 500. So we definitely got a good deal here, given that we were able to get it under off the market and under market value because we isolated that competition and we had a crack at it exclusively. Now, when it came to this client's development strategy, if you actually look around Berska, what you'll actually find, and even certain parts of Rocky, the older the suburb tends to be the areas where the land is land abundant, or not land abundance, or the land size for individual properties is a little bit more generous. So there's certain parts of Berska where you can get properties on 1,000 square meters or more, and there'll be other suburbs like I would say like Rockhampton City. I would say parts of Park Avenue, parts of maybe Wandle and Allenstown, like these really older parts of town tend to have like the bigger land parcels. So we knew straight away when this client came to us with this strategy, we knew we if we narrowed in on these older areas, we're going to get that larger land footprint. But then the next thing you have to do then is actually find a property where the land is feasible to develop, right? And then you need to see examples of feasible developments in that area. And the great thing about this property is when we narrowed in and found this opportunity, what we actually saw was next door. And you can pull the next door address up or look at the property on Google Earth or Google Maps. And what you'll actually find is that the neighboring property, you can actually see it in the photo there, that house to the right, it is actually on the same size land parcel. And what's actually happened is they've retained the existing dwelling, but they've built 4 townhouses at the rear because they've managed to create an access point through the side access or on the left hand side of that property and built 4 townhouses at its rear. And when we saw that, we're like, that is the footprint for this property, and this is the upside potential that this property has down the track, and it ticked their strategy to a T. And when I presented this deal to the client, they're like, yeah, Troy, this is something that we would also do down the track. We would retain the existing dwelling and essentially build townhouses at its rear. And the great thing about this area is that it's already been done before, and the neighboring property has done it before. So it's definitely feasible, and council would be very proactive if they went to council with the development approval or application to get this done. I think council would rubber stamp that straight away. So if you are someone with a development or granny flat strategy, look in these older suburbs around the inner middle ring of Rockhampton. What you'll find is the land size and the zoning actually allows for this sort of strategy. As you move further and further out to the newer areas or the newer construction, land size tends to get smaller and smaller, and the zoning changes more to low density residential. So you won't have really any ability to do that as a strategy, but you just have to be mindful that some of these inner middle ring suburbs actually are really in really close proximity to the Fitzroy River, as well, so they can be subject to flooding. So providing you stay out of the flood zone and you can get something that's maybe where floods aren't affecting that particular street or area, then you're going to do just fine. But I think properties like this have a really good long-term potential, because one of the big things that's across the marketplace right now in regional Queensland is that we have a big supply shortage. And if you're an investor that can buy a property like this, hold it for a couple of years, leverage off the equity and put a granny flat or townhouses at its rear, what you can actually do and be is actually be someone that's a part of the solution of creating new supply, because we just don't have enough new supply in the pipeline, or supply isn't being built fast enough. So when mum and dad investors come to the marketplace and they do this type of investment strategy, what they're doing is actually solving a really big problem or crisis that the marketplace is experiencing. Anne and Joey are definitely going to be a part of that, but at the same time they're going to be a part of it, but at the same time make some really good money. So yeah, jump online, check out that deal, guys. It's a good one. I would say there's still plenty of good buys around in suburbs like Burscough or the other inner middle ring suburbs around Rockhampton that are under 500 and even under $600,000 as well. But as I said, you just have to do your due diligence to make sure that the development is feasible and then it's out of flood affected areas as well.